Welcome to Evan's Legacy Financial Podcast. You know, there's a moment when staying costs more than leaving. Most people feel and stay and keep an exit. Burning the ships isn't about courage. It's about removing retreat so that forward is the only option. These conversations aren't about outcomes. They're about decisions that make going back impossible. This is Burn the Ships. Good morning and welcome back to Burn the Ships podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Joe Cramer. Joe, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Jake. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. So, today, Joe, we're talking about Joe, athlete, entrepreneur, someone who's never stopped competing. Born in Brazil, adopted at 3. You were raised in Eugene, Oregon. Your life has been defined by transition and reinvention. Training in the United States, compete in judo and qualify for the Olympic trials. You walked away from medicine. There's just all kinds of stuff going on here. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. Can we do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All
Thanks for
right.
having
So my first question to you is going to kind of set us up. When you made the decision to leave the medical field in 2012, what were you chasing and what were you leaving behind?
Well, growing up in the Bay Area, obviously, our great CEO and owner and visionary Eric Olson actually went to San Jose State as well. So it was actually I could have been on the team by it took 4 people to finally have me really take a look at the industry from a different perspective, right? And for me, it was not about the money because I'd done everything I've done, I've always done the best I could. So like I feel like I can win in anything I do. And so I had got my master's and people were approaching me, but a lot of it was based on money and financial gain versus the fact that I'm really just focused on helping people, right?
Right.
But my dad retired in 2011, and that's what changed my whole perspective because he's an entrepreneur and he started with one machine in our backyard. He built a big company. And I was at his retirement party the summer before, and everybody's like, "What are you going to do now, Bob? Now that you're done working?" And he was selling the dream on retirement. And so I thought to ask him a different question. I said, "Hey, Dad, now that you're done working, and I feel like I'm just getting started." I was like, "What's your big advice for me?" And he said, "Son, I'm proud of you." He goes, "You have no ownership." Right. And I go, "What do you mean? Like I should start a company?" And he goes, "Yeah, if you find something you're passionate about." He goes, "But I'm talking about your finances." He goes, you just sign up for whatever the hospital offers. You think that's how you're going to get ahead?" He said, "Business owners have to figure it out themselves. They have to take ownership. Why don't you go sit with somebody and ask them what business owners do?"
Right.
And so then guess what? Those a few of those people that always be hitting me up, and I helped them a few times with some trainings, and they would follow up. And then one day I ran into a couple that introduced me originally, and I was like, "Hey, do you guys do things for like business owners?" My dad just retired, and they were like, "Man, we've been trying to tell you this for 3 years." And I was like, "Okay, calm down, calm down." Word for word, I literally told him, I said, "Calm down." I said, "Come over to my house, make some dinner. You can show me what you got, and you get your chance, right?" And so then they came over, taught me a few things, and then my dad. I called up my dad. I said, "Hey, Dad, I sat down with somebody." He goes, "Yeah, I got 3 of these. I got 4 of these." He goes, "Yeah, you just got to have different things than just at the hospital." He goes, "Good job." And so I felt like that was a good blessing there. And so I started learning a few things on the side. And then the couple that helped me were like, "Hey, we don't charge our clients. We just ask for referrals. Who do you know?" And I was the center manager. I said, "Well, you know what? I could set up a lunch and learn. You guys can come out and talk to them." We got all different types of age groups there. And so from that, that's where I saw the value because the people that I thought would be interested the most actually had things in place. And the people that like the doctors and them were like, "Thank you for setting this up." And I was just like, wow, you don't know people's situations. And then,
It's funny that
yeah.
I would say more than half of Americans, our neighbors, more than half of our neighbors know nothing about financial freedom and about planning and all that. They think that and like Paul Hart says, they're a slave and they're chained to their W-2, and they think that that's all there is, and check to check. You know what I mean?
We know what we know, we don't know what we don't know, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and so what got me to make the move though was that after they did the lunch and learn, they came back to me, and the lady asked me, she said, "Hey, we know you have degrees, but have you ever thought about licenses? And I was like, yeah, I was thinking about getting my real estate license. And her husband had come from real estate, and they're like, that's good too. But with your medical field side, did you know that with a life license, there's over 30 different ways you can get paid? We just did six different things from your lunch and learn. And so I was like, well, shoot, I mean, if I'm gonna get a license, I guess that sounds like a good license. I go, how much would have I made if I had the license? And they go, oh, you missed out on $3,000. And I was like, what, from a lunch and learn? And at that time, my little side gig was that I was a DJ, and I'd be DJing some parties and stuff. And every once in a while, somebody would come to the hospital and be like, "Hey, wait, didn't I see you?" And I'm like, "No, no, you didn't see me. You didn't see me. That was somebody else, right?" So I was living the life of running the hospital and DJing the weekends and things like that. And so yeah, so eventually though, what really was though, to answer your question, it was not about the money. And that's what we do here, that I'm really passionate about over these last 14 years now, was that even though we're in the money business, what's more valuable than money is time,
It's time.
right? And I wouldn't have been able to do all the amazing things I did if my dad never stepped out of his career. And just thinking about, he was more available than any other dads to take me around the country for judo tournaments, and just the support we had from him. But I watched him build his dream, and and go through all the ups and downs. So that's really what motivated me, was that I love helping. I fought for my time, and I was able to go full time and leave that career, and I fight for it every day, and I love helping others do the same thing, because when
That's
you have
awesome.
control of time, that's a beautiful thing.
So, I want to talk a little bit about your early story. A couple of quick questions. What do you know about your life in Brazil? Because you were born in Brazil.
Yeah.
I've got my one of my wife's uncles is staying down there. He's always going back. Matter of fact, I've got him Miguel's Brazil because he's always in Brazil. So it's like he worked for the government and stuff, and he's been down there a lot. So, what do you know about your life in Brazil before the adoption?
Well,
Anything?
I'm lucky to be adopted by technically my aunt. So
Okay.
I'm a gift from a brother to a sister. My mom happened to be visiting Brazil, who's my aunt, and she couldn't have kids. They were actually going to adopt from another orphanage, and picked out a kid as well. So that's how lucky I am. But luckily, my grandma was like, "No, no, no, we got a surprise for you. Got a surprise for you." And yeah, so my real name is Jose. And my grandma's like, no, you got to take Jose. He, I'm raising him right now, and talk to your brother. So then ended up finding out that my brother, my father, and then my birth mom were like, gave permission, and so I got to come to the United States at about 3 years old. I finally made it here, and luckily I got to go back right away, because obviously I have family there. So I have my biological dad is still alive, and then I have about six or seven brothers and sisters there. So I have a whole nother little family there in
Oh,
Brazil.
that's awesome.
Haven't gone. My goal is to go here soon. It's been a little while with the entrepreneurial journey, but yeah, definitely want to. I always have Brazil there. I've been back about three or four times, and every time it's just humbled me to realize where I could have been, which is still beautiful down there. But I got the dream over here, and so that's what really drives me, is that I got the best
Awesome.
of both worlds.
So
Yeah,
you moved to up in Eugene, Oregon, correct? And with
yeah,
your
that's
with your
right.
aunt and Bob, you mentioned Bob. So
Yeah.
talk to me, how was it like growing up in Eugene? I mean, that's a far cry from Brazil.
Yeah, especially in the like 70s, 80s, definitely interesting times. But my dad has a lot of jokes, you know, um, as far as me me being the like only dark kid there, really, in the small town and stuff. And my mom, I was getting picked on a little bit in school and stuff, and I wasn't really good with American sarcasm and stuff. So yeah, so Karate Kid was the movie at the time. So my mom tried to put me in the karate, but the instructor there said I was not ready for taekwondo. It was taekwondo, but then I ended up falling in love with judo, and got really good at it, and basically loved competing. And then by age 15, I was the number one judo player. Multiple years in Northwest champion there, and so
Nice.
coach from the U.S. Olympic team, junior Olympic team, invited me to go to live in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center, and do half of my judo there, and then I did half of my high school there, half in Oregon, and then got to work with another coach there, and so I was doing judo there in the Springs, and then eventually came home and I had a scholarship for San Jose State was on the back burner, and yeah, I just went to Oakland for one of my last Junior Olympics out there. It happened to be in the Bay Area, and I was like, wow, I could be over here, and so then I made the move, and I left there, and eventually got to San Jose State.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you talked about Oregon and how you felt there, and you already answered a couple of my questions. So I'm going to move on. About the athlete side, and you know, what did training to represent the United States teach you about discipline?
Well, I think that's the biggest thing, any sports, I always felt like I was really good at football too, just, Jake, like it was tough. Like obviously I'm not the tallest, so my dad was real with me. He said, "Hey, you're not gonna get much taller." But judo might take you around the world. You got the
You know,
South.
here's I'm going to tell you something about football about that. My son was the smallest kid in school, and he was short. Right? I mean, he's big. He's a beast now, but he was short. And I watched him on that football field, and it's not about your size; it's about the heart. I watched this kid going up against players that were 4 times his size in practice with the pad, and he'd have to go and he'd have to block it, and he'd bounce off, he'd get up and he'd pick up the pad, and he'd go and he'd hold it, and the bigger guy would come over and knock him down. He'd pick it up, hand it to him, and run back to line and do it all over again. It was like, it's about heart, it's not about your
Yeah.
size or anything like that. So that's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
what I'm hearing from you, because you're right, you're not a tall guy,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't the tallest at that time, and but yeah, I was ripping off 5 touchdowns a game. I got to suit up for varsity as a freshman, and so I had a really good football. I was the MVP, and I had all the high schools trying to recruit me in Eugene coming out of high school for football. But I also had judo, so I went with judo, and it was amazing. It took me around the world. And what it taught me though was like I tell people, some people, everybody has goals. I was running for that Olympic gold medal, but what it taught me is consistency, definitely discipline, being on time. I'm really big on that. I think that's because I'm used to my instructors putting you to making you do extra for being late, right? So we really find pride in showing up, and also too that, just like you said, you have that never give up spirit. Like that's something that I'm very proud of, that I don't fold, and that's the one thing you're gonna get from me. I never give up.
Yeah. So you qualified. You were qualifying for the 1996 Olympic trials. What did that mean to you personally? Like, where did that touch you?
It was a very tough day, because sometimes you have to think of it like, how many people wish they could be there, right? But it also kind of taught me that at the elite level, it's all about your day, like, and it taught you that every day is like that, that every that it's all about your day. If you're bringing the best and you put in the work, not it's not always going to go your way, but you got to take pride that you showed up, and so I made it there. Things didn't go as planned as I had hoped. I always visualized my parents being in the stands, and they were going through some things, and so my mom missed her flight. My dad didn't make it. My had a hard time cutting weight. Things were just off, and it just wasn't a good day for me. But I made it. I made it as close as you could. I was getting ready to try to make it to the 2000 Olympics, and then I got hurt, and I just decided, you know what, it's my senior year of college, and everybody's always called me Judo Joe all my life. It was my identity, and I wanted to know what life was like without that, so I started attacking my schooling. And I saw that, what's life after judo? There was no MMA or anything like that. You could go to Germany and come back, but then what when you come back? And so I had good mentors, and so I just decided to jump in the career and bring that competitive spirit to my life, and see where we go from there.
And that's amazing right there. Is taking the competitive spirit, no matter what field or what sport you're in, and translating that into life. Because what happens after sports? You got a lot of athletes out there that are going to be listening, saying, what happens after sports? I mean, I watch it, and I've said it for years. What happens to these football guys that's all they've ever known? And nowadays we're getting a lot of athletes that are stepping up, and they're having broadcasting careers, or they're having other careers, or volunteering, or opening being entrepreneurs in a voluntary way because they have the money to do it. So
Mhm.
you went on to study kinesiology and earn an MBA in healthcare administration, right? And so but how long did you do that for?
Well, I got the kinesiology degree from San Jose State. After 2000 judo, for finish, my schooling. I specialized in corporate fitness because at the time the opportunity I saw was that all these big companies had these gyms and work. Wellness was very important inside all these companies. So I went in and I was making like 65 coming out of college. That which is pretty good, right? You're coming out of school, and it was a great opportunity, but then part of what we do now is that .com bust happened. So again, guess what's the first things that get cut? The fun stuff, right?
Fun
And
stuff.
so
Yep.
then that's kind of where life kind of took a turn for me because then I didn't get fired, but then I got my hours cut. And so then it was my first commuting job in the Bay Area. So Menlo Park, so across the way there was Palo Alto. So I happened to get a temp job at the Stanford Student Health Center, and that's when my destiny for healthcare happened because I was working in the medical field and the medical records, and then one day the phones were ringing, nobody was answering the phones or nobody's around, and I answered the phone kind of up at the front desk instead of staying back, and I went and was being assertive, right? And I answered the phone like professional, a true story, like almost like Michael J. Fox, Secret of My Success. I literally answered the phone. Hey, hello, Stanford Hospital. This is Joe. How can I help you? And then the lady heard me say, "Hey, I don't know. I'm just covering the phones, but I'll tell you what. Give me your number. I'll make sure somebody calls you." And then I went and found somebody, and she goes, "I heard you. I heard you on the phone. You did really good." And I was like, "Well, I do got a college degree." And then she was like, "Well, we should use you some more." And so then I got to learn a little bit, and then here's why referrals is so big to me, and why I helped that couple when they told me they don't charge their clients, they just ask for referrals, because that lady who heard me answer the phone, she changed my life. Because after my assignment was done, true story, I was with a temp agency, and the lady had told me, "Sorry, we can't keep you, but I do have a friend that might have an opportunity for you over at the pulmonary chest clinic at the hospital." And 2 weeks later, the agency called me and said, "Hey, this never happens, but there's a position. They're looking for somebody at the pulmonary, and your name was mentioned, that they requested you." And I was like, wow, that lady put my name in. And that changed my whole life. I did not know. And then I came there and I brought that competitive spirit to just really work hard. And then Ann Little, who was my first mentor, she said that she loved that when she gave me assignments, I never left without telling her what I got done. That she had to eventually tell me, "Hey, you don't have to stop here every time and tell me, what you're doing. I know you're working, right?" And next thing you know, I just started moving up really fast. I went from check-in to check-out to new patient coordinator to thoracic patient coordinator to chemotherapy. And then next thing you know, they said, "Well, if you want to climb any higher, though, guess what? You got to either go get that RN license or you got to get that master's." So then I started working on my master's while I was working, and eventually that's how I became a center manager.
Wow, that's amazing. And you know what? All from picking up a phone. It's like, I've watched. I've done that myself. I've gone into places that, I mean, people know me, of course, but I picked up their phone and answered it for them. It's like, did you just do that? Yeah, I just did that. You guys aren't available to do it. Why not? I'm helping out. I just want to be helpful.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the part of the, I don't know if it's competitiveness or the entrepreneur and the fight and the heart that's in people like you and I and others out there, that when you take that step and push through that fear of, well, what's the worst that could happen?
Yep.
For you, it's like, I'm not in that position, so they can't really fire me from the position if I'm going to try to do the position. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Worst that could happen is say, hey, don't do that again. All right, no problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's the best part about why people become successful, though. It's when you actually don't think,
You
like a
just
lot of
do.
people just do, like that's
Yeah.
like the old Jedi, Yoda, don't try, do, And when I think that's the, like, like I was thinking about it, you're saying burn the boats, right? So, the name of your show, I like that, right? Burn the boats, because think about this, when you're in the zone, right? When everybody wants to be in the zone, and like they think it's only for athletes, like when Steph Curry is like on fire, right? That hoop is like this big,
Yep.
it's big, right? So if you think about it in life, every time somebody's got ahead in life, every single time, whether they're trying to get in a career, whether they're trying to like, have that connection. It's when everything kind of went silent and they're just in it, right? And that's why people pay two, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 go see people like Tony Robbins. Because why? Because they're trying to capture that in a bottle, they're trying to get that moment there. And I think to me that's the key of like where some people are, continue moving forward, and then some people get stuck and they're just trying to find that way to, have those really quick resets during the day, during an hour, right? In all
Right.
in all in all areas, because anybody can go down a hole, right? And then guess what happens? You say burn the boats. That's what's happening. There's a lot of these things, these unknowns, that like, your doubt comes in, that you got the boat of doubt over there. You got all these things you're thinking, I could do this, I could do that, but really it's that focus to get back to where you're at. And that's what keeps a person moving forward, and how fast they can regroup. And the good news, like you said, is it's just that one phone call, that one conversation, just giving a little bit without really thinking about it. You go, wow, you know what? I did that. I did that,
Right, right.
and and that.
And burning the ships. I'm glad you say that because it is part of the show. Is yeah, those boats sometimes are the things that we need to leave behind, but they're also some of the things that are going to launch us into. Okay, I've got no retreat. Like when I got into real estate, what I was taught is you don't get to have a plan B. You don't get to fall back on mechanics because I'm 45 years a master mechanic. You don't get to fall back on that. You do real estate,
Yeah.
and just recently I'm doing I was, I've said this before. I was driving down the road and I said, okay, God, what do I need to burn next to be able to launch forward in this financial services career? And I kid you not, Joe, I was on my way back from Monterey, piece of paper, or it was from Ethos last month, and a piece of paper fell out into my lap from my advisor, and it was my Diagnostics Plus, my business card for my mechanic business, and it was like God telling me, here you go, drop that on the floor. That's it, you're done. You're not doing that anymore. I'm like, okay, I'm not, and I'm driving down the street the other day. It's like, what do I need to do? And it's like, God, you're in control. That next check will come when it's supposed to. Just be out there helping people. And that's what I think. That's what our mindset and your mindset, I'm hearing, is in the same frame. And I think it's so cool to meet like-minded people like that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry. So you got your MBA, healthcare, and then you made a pivot. Because we don't panic, we pivot, right? So you made the pivot and the transition to financial services. Was that scary, or did it just feel right?
It was like basically how I say it is that when you finally understand passive income. And then actually the person that introduced me to passive income was a good friend of mine. He's actually doing a GFI right now. He lives in Guatemala. He's a good friend of mine. His name's Sergio. And his business is growing in Brazil because GFI is global, right? And
Right.
then he's still helping some people here in the US. And but he was the one who went full time first when we were starting out back then. So me and him been doing this the whole time. And so he's selling me the dream on being full time. So then he's like, and then he was like, hey, imagine if you actually, were focused on this, and that's what I thought about. So how it worked was I called my dad. I said, hey, Dad, how old were you when you started the machine shop? He said he was 42. I was 37 at the time. I said, well, Dad, I got 5 years on you, and I'm thinking about jumping ship here. And I'm gonna go give my all and build this business. I think I can build it. And then he goes, well, you can always go back. And I go, no, Dad, if I leave here, I'm gonna be just like you. I'll never go back.
Right.
I never want a boss again. I never want somebody to tell me when if I can go to the bathroom. I never want to work so hard that you go on vacation and then they headhunt your staff and then hold that against you when you have new staff. This is the kind of stuff hospitals have to deal with,
Exactly.
right? And I was just like tired of that part. So what I did is that I turned to I had a date, I had a deadline to go full time, and I worked my butt off to make that even happen. I even moved it up a week earlier because I was like, wait a second, my birthday, I want to do it on my birthday. I decided in end of August, September that I was going to go full time on my birthday. And I was like, oh, wait, that's too close to Thanksgiving. So I moved it up. So the date that my last day working was November 9th of 2012. I went all in. But that day was the last day that I turned everything in. I went out to Pacific over there at the ocean, and I just sat with myself for one moment. I said, "Hey, you know what? Whatever you got to do, you're not going back. You got to
Right.
grow. You got to challenge yourself, and it's not going to be easy, but you're gonna win." So that's what drives me every day is the promise I made to myself.
It's funny because years ago, I picked up a business, and in 2006 is when I did my last W-2. And I said, and I had that imposter syndrome where, am I really self-employed or am I just fooling myself? Am I
Mhm.
really a business owner? And I had to have people tell me, you're a business owner. I said, no, I'm just a guy that's unemployed. you know and so what my and I lean heavily. My mom is one of my best friends. One day she called me up, and we were talking, and I go, Mom, I'm really down. I'm blah, blah, blah. She goes, why? I said, because I'm unemployed. She goes, pull over. What's the nearest store? I go, there's a Walmart right here. So pull in. So I pull into a Walmart. She goes, go inside. I go, what are you doing? She goes, just go inside, trust me. Find a mirror. And I said, okay. So I went in the Walmart and I found a mirror. And she goes, what do you see? I said, I see someone who's unemployed. I said, she goes, are you doing business? Are you making money? Are you doing things for other people? She goes, yeah. Then she goes, do you have a sign around your neck that says unemployed? No. Then you're the only one that sees that. Nobody else does. So hold your head high. Go out there and do what you're doing because you're doing that. And that's what it means. What I'm seeing here, that's what it means to be an entrepreneur, to take the reins of your own and control your own life, control your own destiny, and be able to do things and be confident in the abilities you have. You have an MBA, dude. Come on. I mean, I love it. I absolutely love it. So you took your you shifted gears, you pivoted, you came into the industry, and how does your athletic mindset translate into financial services?
Well, I don't know how long you've been in the financial service industry side, but I'm the old school guy. So when it came to it, I mean, we did whatever it took to go and get in front of people. I mean, when I was fighting those 3 months between that September and to go full time, I was driving down to LA on the weekends. I was telling people, "Oh, I'm gonna be visiting another client while I'm down there," and I was only going down there to see them. Like I was doing whatever it took to get back in front of my clients, and knowing that when we get in front of people, we're going to help them, and that's the
Yeah.
part that I really got from that. And I think the Zoom world is great in technology, but nothing like getting in the car and going and making it happen, right? I'm from that old school side, so I love both a lot, and I'm learning how to do both. But I think what really came to me is setting that goal, and you're going to push towards that, and then rewarding yourself later. There's sacrifices. One of the biggest sacrifice I did for me was like saying, okay, hey, you know what? I love music, I love DJing, but if I'm going to change my identity of how I want to be, music will be there for me. So I actually stepped aside from that. My friends thought I was crazy. I sold my equipment. I went all in. And they were like, man, this guy is crazy. What's he doing? And all this stuff. But then fast forward though, after life went up and down, and then now the pandemic hit, and I was here in Denver and didn't know anybody really. Guess what? I was able to get that DJ equipment back, and now I have a balance of things that make me happy while I'm still grinding. But I had to sacrifice for a while. I had to put my head in there and really work on what it is to be an entrepreneur, to be a leader. Because when you come from management is different than leadership. So for me, that was the biggest thing, is that, yeah, I was able to organize and have a lot of things uh, you know, developed for me fast. I was able to replace my six figures in my first year, switching up industries, and a lot of it was that drive. But the other side was like, now I wanted to grow. I wanted to get to the next level, so I had to work on myself of being a leader versus a manager. So those
It's
were
funny. It's funny.
the,
Leadership, management.
yeah,
Management, you're moving the pieces around. You're managing the board.
yeah,
A leader gets on the board and becomes one of the lead pieces and shows them how it's done. That's the
yeah,
difference between management and leadership.
yeah. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, and then there's different areas because everybody comes in with different the goals. That's what I love about what we do. There's people that love, like and that's what's amazing about our business, our platform. There's people that just love to help, single moms, and there's people that love to do this and they love to do that, right? There's a lot of awesome, amazing, like you have your niche, you found a good niche for you, right? And you're changing things. And so then there's the area of finding leaders, right? So for me, yeah, I love helping somebody build their story, helping them grow like their branding of that, because if you can't connect with why you're doing this, you're not going to be successful, right? So I feel like that's a big strength when we bring somebody on board. So to me, that's the fun stuff, because I had to do it.
Right.
I had to like say, hey, are you going to go from this guy that's like doing hospital stuff and this judo guy, and why would people follow you? Well, that to me, that's the first example of it, that I done that. And so just reminds you, and if anybody's listening, your story is really where that's where it's gonna go. Nobody follows somebody that's just instantly successful, right? There's a story there, and you have to get used to sharing that, and understand that every
Exactly.
day you hold the pen. So we're rewriting it right now. You and I here right now are sharing a piece that could help somebody and get that out there, and that's part of our way of giving back. And that's the story. So I really love what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I do. And we're talking about leadership, and you're leading a pretty good sized team over there in Colorado. What does it mean to mentor agents? What does it mean to you at this stage of your career?
That's a good question. Well, I would say that I think that it's true. You gotta, I think when we're young in the business or any business, we focus sometimes as you grow, the numbers grow, we can tend to look at, who's not showing up, because you get, like we're getting closer to 100 licensed agents, and that's exciting, but the thing is that you could focus on the people not showing up, and yes, you want to work on those areas, but guess what, it's all about who's showing up. So to me, I don't care, if I got two people showing up or I got 100 people showing up, I show up. And then when you ask me about my background, I've recently just realized that my discipline of showing up, to me, that's the number one sign of a leader. I always make sure that I run that schedule, I run it tight, and I'm going to be there. You know what I mean? So to me, that's the fun part. But I'll tell you the part that gives me the best part, and I was just training on that last night, is that everybody gets an opportunity, you know, and that's the fun part. Everybody gets a shot at the big time if they want that, right? And the cool part is watching somebody like we brought on a new business partner, and right now she's just growing in so many different areas. But all the time, her family were like, yeah, 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 is this gonna happen? And now guess what? She's actually growing a team. She's learning how to really like connect with people, and just to see people's growth, to me, that's like, that you can't put a price on that, especially when you have that servant heart to help people grow.
Exactly. Exactly. So, what do you look for in the people you develop, and what's the hardest part of leading them?
Um, well, I mean, obviously they got to see it in themselves a little bit. They're gonna want it a little bit, right? That's the hardest part, because you can, what's the saying? You can lead a horse to water, right? I guess they say, right? But my biggest thing about that is what I see in them though is, number one, I'm really on the organic side, so like I'm all about energy, you know and when you can see that somebody's got good energy and they really do have a sense of like caring for people, like we talked about at the beginning, yeah, when it comes to fortunately financial services, and even just how money works for them and what they've seen in their life, yeah, our industry, people are blinded or tainted along the way for like what's there, but at the bottom core is when they really connect and see like, hey, we help people. So I look for people that have good energy, and I can connect well with people, or have a burning desire to learn, because that's the second piece, is like, our business, you can come on board right now, and your first client, you can make $20,000. Now the question is going to be, after we put $20,000 in somebody's bank account, do they have the spirit to want to keep learning, to want to grow, right? I'm doing this 14 years now, and I'm sure you are too, knowing that, man, every day we get to learn something new.
No,
We're
and
learning.
I'm going to tell you something. That right there is the key to this whole thing. If you're not going to remain teachable, if you're not going to keep learning, I'm 60. I'm going to be 64 years old this year,
Mhm.
and I'm just beginning to learn some of the things that I need to learn in this business. because I'm teachable. I want to remain teachable. And if I'm not, if you're not trying, you're dying. I'm sorry, but if you're not trying, it's when you retire, you got to keep trying, keep learning, or you start dying, and that's just the way it is.
Exactly. And that's the hardest part for a lot of people. Oh, I don't want to sit on another Zoom training. Man, we used to have to drive to the office to get this information. I'd sit in traffic for an hour and a half to be on time to come through that door. So Eric knew I was on time in my seat because I had the respect for those that are pouring in that are trying to help us. And now that I'm one of those people, I look at that. And if you ask me what that is too, is that respect to be on time, that stuff that says, hey, I respect that, we're putting in our time because we want to share. And then I'm showing up to everything learning. I see you at all the trainings too, because things are changing so fast right now. It's an exciting time. So if we're going to partner up with people and they don't feel that excitement in their eyes to want to learn and like, bring something to the table with this
The
knowledge,
passion.
the passion, then, it's not going to work. It's not going
Yeah,
to work.
what's funny is when I first came into GFI, Javier brought me in, and I'm like, yeah, Javier, whatever. I'm going to make a little bit of money and whatever. I'm still doing my notary. I'm still doing my mechanic. But I'm going to make some bucks. You know what I mean? And I'm going to help some people. And I thought it was just another notch in my belt. And he says, you got to show up. You got to be there on Thursday nights. You got to be there. I want you to go to Ethos. I want you to go to these events and things like that. I said, well, and when I started showing up at those events, I could go to Zoom and get it, but what do I do when I'm on Zoom at home? I'm turning it on and I'm walking into the other room and I'm kind of listening to it a little bit. When I'm there in the office, in person, suiting up and showing up and sitting in a chair, I start to get it. You
Yeah.
know, I start to, and then I build a community and I build a brotherhood and I build a family. And I'm going to tell you right now that they say and you guys are going to hear this. My listeners are going to hear this over and over again. When you change your top five, you're going to change your life. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't change your top five and continue to do what you're doing, you're not going to grow. I changed my top five, and I don't recognize the person I was in January.
Yeah. It's funny that you mention that because when you think about athletes, right? Like obviously I'm an athlete and you think life after sports. And even if you think about like why the industry is exploding right now, it all comes down to technology, right? Because we do have access. So back in the day, after an athlete would finish school, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to shoot for they're going to shoot for the gold. They're going to shoot for the NFL. They're going to shoot for the pros, and then they would go back to their small towns, their lives that they're at, right? And they look around and they'd be like, man, I was just in the environment of high achievers, coaches driving you, all this stuff. And then you go back to your little town, and guess what? Now look at the five people you're hanging around the most too. Right. So now with technology, everybody's able to stay connected, jump on a podcast, can keep that burning desire. Right. And to me, that's the side that whether you're an athlete or not, that's the connection. Right. It's like being able to say, hey, I want to be close to the fire. So to me, when you ask me like what's the key there you're looking for now, it's like, hey, you got to keep coming, you got to keep showing up, right?
Right.
And that's the person that I don't care if they've closed, helped one family or they've done nothing. If I see them showing up, you know what, I'm gonna work with them, and
Right.
I'm focusing on that. And that's what I taught on last night. Is like, how can I help those that are showing up, make it a little easier for them and find out how we can help them win, right? And then hopefully that one person or those three people can take that and duplicate that new energy. And if it's meant for some of those to come back, start coming into that environment, great. But there's so many people out there looking for an opportunity right now, and that's why we're here to help people.
Awesome. That's so awesome. So I got a few, just like two or three more questions, really quick answers. Because we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, yeah, let's do rapid
So
fire.
what's that?
Rapid fire.
So I'm going to do some rapid fire here. So let's
Okay.
let's
Yeah.
get through these. What do most people get wrong about starting over?
Um, that it's going to take a long time. Because remember the key of starting over is that you're better than you were when you started the first time,
Yep. And
right?
it's a funny you say that because one of the trainings that we were both at, they said if you change yourself, if you make a difference in your life or improve yourself 1% every day, in 100 days you're going to be 100% better than you were at the start.
Correct.
Yeah. So what's been the hardest moment of your journey?
Shoot, no, all of it. No, no, I guess the hardest moments is always the change in like adapting as the leader to help the team as fast as possible because the industry is changing constantly. So
Yes.
I am one of those people, and I've had a lot of organizational changes, but learning through that, you keep showing up, everything will
Keep
work out.
showing up. That's
Yeah.
it. What are you most proud of today?
Never giving up. That's what I'm
Never
most proud
given.
of.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
see that.
yeah, I'm proud that I was able to leave my six-figure career, made another six figures. I was able to leave my previous practice company that I was with for 10 plus years, come over to GFI and make six figures again in my first year, and now helping others do the same. And so just to show that, yeah, when you ask that first question about restarting, I think that's the thing for every single day.
Awesome, awesome. Now this one here. What do you want people to feel? Not know or hear, but what do you want people to feel after hearing your story today?
Yeah, it's that you can always continue to reinvent yourself. That life is a journey, right? And there's different chapters. There's always gonna be a lot of different chapters, but you hold the pen. You are like you said, you go like your mom told you, you go look in the mirror and decide what are you telling yourself because probably how other people see you. Everybody doesn't realize, and I wish more people would take time to pour into those that they care about, because really sometimes the hardest critic, the toughest critic is ourselves, right? But
Exactly.
we already have all the answers. Everybody else sees it, and everybody. So if you're listening to this, I don't care what industry you're in, keep moving forward, and it's all about belief, because the number one question that if when Eric, our CEO, has asked over the last 14 years that I've heard him talk to champions like you, Jake, and he'd ask you the same question, and that question is, if you had to start all over again, what's the number one thing you would do? And you know what his answer is every single time, that every person he's ever asked in any industry, is that they wish they would have believed quicker and stronger that it could happen faster, right? That they wish they would have believed faster, because it doesn't have to take a long time. It,
No,
it's our belief level, and then that's where belief keeps you in the zone, And whenever you find yourself not doubting yourself, because doubt is worse than fear, you got to just check your belief level. You got to have that faith, and whatever that means to you, that word faith, and that's the key.
I'm going to say something about that when you start doubting yourself. And what I found that works, and I don't know anybody else out there who's going to agree with me or not, but what I found recently that works, I come into the office, I'm getting ready to do an appointment, I don't feel it. I'm like, man, what am I going to do here? You know what I get to do is I get to pick up the phone and call a Carlos and Sodas or a David Fox or Stacy, and I get to call them and give them a pep talk.
Mhm.
Whether they need it or not, I get to start pumping them up, saying, "Hey," or David Fuentes, I go, "Hey, bro, are you ready to go today, man? Are we going to do this? Are we? Hey, let's do this, you know." And by the time I get on that call, he hasn't given me anything. I did it. It came from within here
Yeah.
because it was always there. I just had to draw it out, and by helping others, we help ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. Joe, man, this has been awesome, dude. Thank you so much for everything you brought to the table today. You know, your
Yeah. Yeah.
story is proof that where you start doesn't determine where you go. From Brazil to Oregon, from the mat to the boardroom, every chapter every chapter required you to fully commit and burn the ships behind you. So I want to thank you for your commitment. And I'm going to ask the audience one last question, and this is for the listeners. Is there a version of yourself you've been afraid to become? And what would it take for you to finally go there? So Joe, tell people where they can reach out to you if they need to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can definitely follow me on Instagram. I am Joe Creamer _HBD. On Instagram, you can also follow me on Facebook, Joe Juze, Juze Kramer, Cramer. And yeah, reach out anytime, and love to share, if you have any stories, things that you need help with, we're here to help everybody.
All right, Joe. Thank you again, man. Stick around for a minute, but everybody, thank you for listening. Joe's an amazing guy, a good friend here with GFI. Subscribe, share this episode. evanslegacyfinancial.com/podcast, because the life you're designed to live is on the other side of the decision you've been putting on. Thank you again, everybody, for showing up today.
Thanks for tuning into the Evans Legacy Financial Podcast. If you got value from today's episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more real conversations that move the needle in life and business. Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and never stop chasing what matters.